October 1871. Chicago is one of the fastest growing cities on earth. Nearly 300,000 people live here now. Railroads arrive from the east. Grain flows from the Midwest. Factories run day and night. The city feels unstoppable, but almost no one notices the one detail that matters most. Chicago is built almost entirely from wood. Wooden houses, wooden sidewalks, wooden barns, wooden rooftops. Even the streets are lined with timber. One spark, and the entire city becomes fuel. But that spark hasn't happened yet. Right now, it is 1 week before the fire, and Chicago is about to experience the most ordinary week in its history. Chicago didn't grow slowly, it exploded. In 1830, fewer than 100 people lived here. By 1871, nearly 300,000 residents crowd the city. Immigrants arrive every week. Irish laborers, German craftsmen, Polish workers, Scandinavian farmers looking for opportunity. Everyone is building everywhere. But building with brick takes time. And time is money. Wood is cheap. Wood is everywhere. The forests of Michigan and Wisconsin supply millions of board feet of lumber. Sawmills along the Chicago River cut timber day and night. Entire neighborhoods appear almost overnight. Houses go up in days. Shops appear in weeks. Streets stretch farther every month. Chicago becomes a city that grows faster than safety regulations can keep up. And slowly, without anyone realizing, the city turns into a perfect fire trap. Stand in the middle of a Chicago street in 1871. At first glance, everything looks busy but ordinary. Workers walk past with tools over their shoulders. Horse carts creak across the road. Shopkeepers shout to passing customers. But if you stop for a moment and really look around, you notice something unusual about this city. Everything is built extremely close together. The houses are packed so tightly that neighbors can sometimes reach out of their windows and nearly touch the building next door. Wooden fences divide narrow backyards, and behind almost every home stands a small barn or stable. Horses need shelter, and many families keep animals just a few steps from their kitchens. Above those barns are lofts filled with dry hay and straw, perfect fuel waiting for a spark. Coal piles sit beside the walls of homes, firewood stacks line the alleys, chimneys rise from almost every roof, sending thin trails of smoke into the air throughout the day. And then there are the sidewalks. Instead of stone or brick, most sidewalks in Chicago are made of long wooden planks. Thousands of feet of them stretch across the city, forming walkways that creak under every step. After months of heat and almost no rain, the boards have become dry and brittle. Under the sun, the entire city has slowly turned into something dangerous. A place where every wall, every fence, every rooftop can burn. And if a fire ever starts here, it will not simply move from house to house. It will move through the entire city. The summer of 1871 had been unusually harsh for Chicago. For weeks, the sky remained clear, and the rain simply never came. Day after day, the sun baked the city. Grass in empty lots turned brittle and yellow. Dust lifted from the streets whenever a wagon passed. Even the Chicago River seemed slower and heavier in the heat. But the real danger was not the temperature, it was the wood. Chicago was built almost entirely from timber, and after months without rain, the entire city began to dry out like kindling. Roof shingles cracked under the sun, wooden sidewalks shrank and split, barn walls warped in the heat. Everything became easier to burn. Firefighters in Chicago already knew something was wrong. During that summer, the department responded to fire after fire across the city. Small warehouse fires, barns catching from stray sparks, chimneys igniting dry beams inside homes. Almost every day there was another alarm bell. Most of these fires were contained quickly. The city had grown used to them. People assumed Chicago was simply a place where fires happened, and where firefighters always managed to stop them in time. But with every passing week, the conditions became more dangerous. The wood became drier, the streets became dustier, and the entire city slowly turned into something few residents recognized: a place waiting for a spark. Despite all the warning signs, life in Chicago continues almost exactly as usual. At sunrise, factory whistles echo across the city. Workers pour into the streets, boots striking wooden sidewalks that creak beneath thousands of footsteps. Horse carts roll past loaded with lumber, grain, coal, and barrels of goods arriving from the rail yards. Markets open early. Butchers hang fresh cuts of meat outside their shops. Bakers pull warm loaves from brick ovens, and the smell of bread drifts through narrow streets. Shopkeepers sweep dust from wooden doorways while customers argue over prices. Children chase each other through alleys between tightly packed houses. Laundry lines stretch across backyards where barns stand full of dry hay. By afternoon, the saloons begin to fill, glasses clink, laughter spills onto the streets. Construction never stops. Hammers strike nails. New wooden houses rise block by block. Chicago feels alive, busy, loud, confident. A city that believes tomorrow will be even bigger than today. And yet, almost no one stops to notice how dry the wood has become, or how strong the wind feels tonight, or how quickly this ordinary day could turn into something else entirely. Chicago stands on the edge of the vast American prairie where weather moves fast and the wind rarely stops for long. Most days, the city depends on the breeze from Lake Michigan. The lake cools the streets, carries away smoke from factories, and brings fresh air into crowded neighborhoods. But in early October of 1871, the pattern begins to change. The wind is no longer coming from the lake. Instead, it blows in from the dry western plains. Hot, restless, relentless. It travels for hundreds of miles across open prairie before reaching the city, gathering dust and heat along the way. By the time it arrives in Chicago, it moves through the streets like a constant, invisible current. Wooden signs creak on their hinges. Loose shutters tap against window frames. Dry leaves race down the narrow alleys. Even the rooftops begin to whisper under the pressure of the wind. At first, people barely notice. Chicago is used to wind. But this wind feels different. It is stronger than usual, and more importantly, it does not stop. Hour after hour, the air keeps moving, pushing through the tightly packed wooden neighborhoods. And in a city built almost entirely from timber, a steady wind can turn a small fire into something far more dangerous. Because wind doesn't just feed flames, it carries them. It lifts burning embers high into the air. It drops sparks onto distant rooftops. It spreads fire across streets that would normally stop it. All it takes is one moment, one mistake, one spark. And with this wind blowing across Chicago, that spark will not stay small for long. October 7th, Saturday night. The city is loud. Music from saloons, horse hooves on wooden streets, workers finishing long shifts, families cooking late meals. Small fires burn in stoves across thousands of homes. The Chicago Fire Department has already fought several fires this week. The men are tired, equipment is worn, but the night feels calm, ordinary. No one knows that tomorrow night will change the city forever. October 8th, Sunday evening. The air is warm. The wind is strong. In the southwestern part of the city, in a neighborhood of wooden houses and barns, a fire begins. At first, it looks small, just another barn fire, something Chicago firefighters handle all the time. But this time, the wind is stronger, the wood is drier, and the buildings are closer together than ever. Within minutes, the fire jumps to another structure, then another, then another. The flames climb rooftops. The wind pushes sparks high into the night sky. Burning embers travel blocks away, and suddenly, the fire is no longer one fire. It becomes hundreds of fires. At first, the fire behaves like every other fire Chicago has seen before. A few buildings burning, firefighters rushing in, horses pulling heavy pump wagons through the narrow streets. But within minutes, something becomes clear. This fire is different. The wind begins to roar through the streets, feeding the flames with fresh oxygen. Sparks lift into the air like a storm of fireflies, except these sparks don't fade. They travel across streets, across rooftops, across entire blocks. Burning embers land on wooden shingles, dry fences, and hay-filled barns, and suddenly, new fires begin appearing far ahead of the main blaze. Firefighters try to form lines, aiming their hoses at the advancing flames. But the water pressure is weak, and the fire is already spreading faster than they can react. Wooden sidewalks ignite like long fuses running through the city. One house catches, then 3 more, then an entire row. Residents open their doors and see the sky glowing orange. Within minutes, flames are racing through neighborhoods that seemed perfectly safe just moments earlier. Witnesses later describe a terrifying sight. Entire roofs igniting almost at once, as burning embers rain down from the sky. The fire no longer moves like a normal fire. It jumps, leaping from block to block, carried by the relentless wind. Horse-drawn fire engines struggle to move through the crowded streets. People are already running, dragging trunks, carrying children, grabbing whatever they can before fleeing. But the fire moves faster than carts, faster than firefighters. Some say the flames spread faster than a man could run. And in that moment, Chicago realizes something terrifying. The city is no longer fighting the fire. The fire is now chasing the city. The fire is no longer just a disaster. It becomes panic. Across Chicago, thousands of people wake to the same terrifying sight, the sky glowing deep orange as if the entire horizon is burning. Smoke rolls through the streets like a storm. Ash begins to fall from the sky. At first, it looks like snow. Then people realize the truth. Those are burning pieces of the city. Families rush outside carrying whatever they can grab. Blankets, clothes, small boxes of money. Some drag furniture into the streets. Others try desperately to save horses from burning barns. But the fire moves faster than decisions. Entire blocks ignite at once. The wind screams through the streets, throwing sparks across rooftops. Wooden fences burst into flames. Sidewalks burn beneath people's feet. The heat becomes unbearable. Some witnesses later say the air itself felt like an oven. Crowds begin running north toward the lake. Bridges fill with thousands of people pushing carts, wagons, and wheelbarrows. Children cry in the smoke. Mothers hold babies wrapped in blankets. Men try to guide horses through the chaos. But everywhere they look, another street is already on fire. The flames begin to leap impossible distances. Burning embers land on rooftops far ahead of the main fire, and suddenly, new fires erupt everywhere. The city is no longer fighting one fire. Chicago is fighting a storm of fire, and the storm is winning. By the time the fire finally begins to weaken, Chicago is almost unrecognizable. For nearly 2 days, the flames move through the city like a living storm, jumping streets, swallowing entire blocks, and leaving behind only blackened foundations and twisted metal. Where neighborhoods once stood, there are now fields of ash. More than 17,000 buildings have been destroyed. Homes, hotels, churches, factories, warehouses, entire districts that once buzzed with life are simply gone. Nearly 100,000 people, almost a third of Chicago's population, are suddenly homeless. Thousands gather along the shores of Lake Michigan, standing in the cold night air, watching the sky glow red behind them. Many escaped with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. Families search through the smoke for missing relatives. Firefighters collapse from exhaustion. And as the sun finally rises over the ruins, a strange silence settles over the city. Chicago, one of the fastest growing cities in America, now looks like a battlefield. But even in the ashes, something unexpected begins to appear: determination. Within days, people begin clearing debris. Within weeks, rebuilding plans begin. And within years, Chicago will rise again, stronger, taller, and no longer made of wood. What you've just seen is a reconstruction of Chicago during the week before the Great Fire of 1871. The streets, the buildings, the atmosphere, all recreated using artificial intelligence tools to visualize history as realistically as possible. Technology now allows us to see moments from the past in ways that were impossible before. If you want to experience more historical moments like this, from ancient cities to medieval battlefields to forgotten worlds of the past, subscribe for the next journey into history, because sometimes the most ordinary week in history comes right before everything changes.